The history of art is the history of any activity or product made by humans in a visual form for aesthetical or communicative purposes, expressing ideas, emotions or, in general, a worldview. Over time, visual art has been classified in diverse ways, from the medieval distinction between liberal arts and mechanical arts, to the modern distinction between fine arts and applied arts, or to the many contemporary definitions, which define art as a manifestation of human creativity. The subsequent expansion of the list of principal arts in the 20th century reached to 9: architecture, dance, sculpture, music, painting, poetry, film, photography and graphic arts. In addition to the old forms of artistic expression such as fashion and gastronomy, new modes of expression are being considered as arts such as video, computer art, performance, advertising, animation, television and video games. The history of art is a multidisciplinary branch of the arts and sciences, seeking an objective examination of art throughout time, classifying cultures, establishing periodizations, and observing the distinctive and influential characteristics of art. The study of the history of art was initially developed during the Renaissance, with its limited scope being the artistic production of Western civilization. However, as time has passed, it has imposed a broader view of artistic history, seeking a comprehensive overview of all the civilizations and analysis of their artistic production in terms of their own cultural values, and not just Western art history. Today, art enjoys a wide network of study, dissemination and preservation of all the artistic legacy of mankind throughout history. The 20th century has seen the proliferation of institutions, foundations, art museums and galleries, in both the public and private sectors, dedicated to the analysis and cataloguing of works of art as well as exhibitions aimed at a mainstream audience. The rise of media has been crucial in improving the study and dissemination of art. International events and exhibitions like the Whitney Biennial and Biennales of Venice and São Paulo or the Documenta of Kassel have helped the development of new styles and trends. Prizes such as the Turner of the Tate Gallery, the Wolf Prize in Arts, the Pritzker Prize of Architecture, the Pulitzer of Photography and the Oscar of Cinema also promote the best creative work on an international level. Institutions like UNESCO, with the establishment of the World Heritage Site lists, also help the conservation of the major monuments of the planet. Historical development. The field of art history was developed in the West, and originally dealt exclusively with European art history, with the High Renaissance as the defining standard. Gradually, over the course of the 20th century, a wider vision of art history has developed. This expanded version includes societies from across the globe, and it usually attempts to analyze artifacts in terms of the cultural values in which they were created. Thus, art history is now seen to encompass all visual art, from the megaliths of Western Europe to the paintings of the Tang dynasty in China. The history of art is often told as a chronology of masterpieces created in each civilization. It can thus be framed as a story of high culture, epitomized by the wonders of the world. On the other hand, vernacular art expressions can also be integrated into art historical narratives, in which case they are usually referred to as folk arts or craft. The more closely that an art historian engages with these latter forms of low culture, the more likely it is that they will identify their work as examining visual culture or material culture, or as contributing to fields related to art history, such as anthropology or archaeology. In the latter cases, art objects may be referred to as archaeological artifacts. Prehistory and ancient history background. A useful way to examine how art history is organized is through the major survey textbooks, which reflect an encyclopedic view of great art. Frequently consulted textbooks published in English are Ernst Gombrich's Story of Art, Marilyn Stokes-Sad's Art History, Anthony Jansen's History of Art, David Wilkins, Bernard Schultz, and Catherine M. Linduff's Art Past, Art Present, Helen Gardner's Art Through the Ages, Hugh Honor and John Fleming's A World History of Art. and Laurie Schneider Adams's art across time. One of the best places to find information on canonical art history is the Heilbronn Timeline of Art History, sponsored by the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Global Prehistory. The first tangible artifacts of human art are found from the Stone Age, periods when the first demonstrations that can be considered art by humans appear. During the Paleolithic, man practiced hunting and lived in caves, where cave painting was developed. After a transitional period, in the Neolithic period, when man became sedentary and engaged in agriculture, with societies becoming increasingly complex and religion gaining importance, the production of handicrafts commenced. Finally, in the Bronze Age, the first proto-historic civilizations arise. Paleolithic. The Paleolithic had its first artistic manifestation on 25,000 BCE, reaching its peak in the Magdalenian period. The first traces of man-made objects appear in southern Africa, the western Mediterranean, Central and Eastern Europe, Siberia, India and Australia. These first traces are generally worked stone, wood or bone tools. To paint in red, iron oxide was used, in black, manganese oxide and in ochre, clay. Surviving art from this period is small carvings in stone or bone and cave painting. This especially from in the Franco-Cantabrian region. There are pictures with magical religious character and also pictures with a naturalistic sense, which depict animals, notably the caves of Altamira, Trois Frères, Chauvet, and Lasso. Sculpture is represented by the so-called Venus figurines, feminine figures which were probably used in fertility cults, such as the Venus of Willendorf. Other representative works of this period are the Man from Brno and the Venus of Brasempri. Neolithic. This period, from c. 8000 BCE in the Near East, was a profound change for the ancient man, who became sedentary and engaged in agriculture and animal husbandry. New forms of social coexistence and religion developed. The rock art of the Iberian Mediterranean basin, dated between Mesolithic and Neolithic, contained small, schematic human and figures, with notable examples in El Kogel, Valtorita, Alpera and Manateda. This kind of painting was also similar in northern Africa and in the area of modern Zimbabwe. Neolithic painting was schematic, reduced to basic strokes. There are equally noteworthy cave paintings in Pinturas River in Argentina, especially the Cueva de las Manos. In portable art, the Cardium pottery was produced decorated with imprints of seashells. New materials were produced like amber, crystal of rock, quartz, jasper, etc. In this period there appear the first traces of urbanistic planimetry, noting the remains in Tellus Sultan, Jarmo and Catalhoyuk. Metal Age. The last prehistoric phase is the Metal Age, as the use of elements such as copper, bronze and iron proved to be a great material transformation for these ancient societies. In the Chalcolithic the megalith emerged, monuments of stone, i.e., the dolmen and menhir or the English cromlech, as in the complexes at Newgrange and Stonehenge. In Spain the Los Millares culture was formed, characterized by the beaker culture and pictured human figures with big eyes. In Malta, noteworthy are the temple complexes of Haga Qim, Najdra, Tarkson and Gantia. In the Balearic Islands notable megalithic cultures developed, with different types of monuments. The Navita, a tomb shaped like a truncated pyramid, with an elongated burial chamber. The Taula, two large stones, one put vertically and the other horizontally above each other, and the Taliote, a tower with a covered chamber and a false dome. In the Iron Age the cultures of Hallstatt and Latine mark the significant phases in Europe. The first was developed between the 7th and 5th century BCE by the necropolis with tumular tombs and a wooden burial chamber in the form of a house, often accompanied by a four-wheel cart. The pottery was polychromic, with geometric decorations and applications of metallic ornaments. Latin was developed between the 5th and 4th century BCE, and is more popularly known as early Celtic art. It produced many iron objects such as swords and spears, which have not survived well, but bronze continued to be used for highly decorated shields, fibulas, and other objects, with different stages of evolution of the style. Decoration was influenced by Greek, Etruscan and Scythian art. In most of the continent, conquest by the Roman Empire brought the style to an end. Venus of Brassemperide, Mercedes Antiquités Nationalis, Saint-Germain-en-Laye, Menhai in the region of Brittany, Circular Taliote in the island of Majorca, Solar Cart of Trundholm. Ancient Mediterranean art in the first period of history, began with the invention of writing, founded by the great civilizations of Near East, Egypt and Mesopotamia. This period also differed from others because artistic manifestations occurred in every culture of all the continents. In this period appear the first great cities in the main big rivers: Nile, Tigris and Euphrates, Indus and Yellow River. One of the great advances of this period was writing, generated primarily by the need to keep records of economical and commercial nature. The first writing code was the cuneiform script, which emerged in Mesopotamia c. 3500 BCE, written on clay tablets. It was based on pictographic and ideographic elements, while later Cimmerians developed syllables for writing, reflecting the phonology and syntax of the Sumerian language. In Egypt, hieroglyphic writing was developed, with the first sample being the Nama palette. The Hebrew language was one of the first languages to utilize the method of writing with an alphabet, which relates a unique symbol for each phoneme. The Greek and the Latin alphabet derive from it. Mesopotamian art was developed in the area between Tigris and Euphrates, where from the 4th millennium BCE many different cultures existed such as Sumer, Akkad, Amorite, Chaldee, etc. Mesopotamian architecture was characterized by the use of brick, lintel and the introduction of construction elements like arch and vault. Notable are the Ziggurats, large temples with the form of a terraced step pyramid, from which we have practically no traces left except their bases. The tomb was usually a corridor, with a covered chamber and a false dome, as in some examples found in Ur. There were also palaces walled with a terrace in the form of a ziggurat, giving great importance to gardens. Sculpture was developed through wood carving in relief and was used in religious, military and hunting scenes, depicting both human and animal figures, whether they were real or mythological. In the Sumerian period there were small statues of angular form, with colored stone, bald head and with hands on the chest. In the Akkadian period there were figures with long hair and beard, noting the stela of Naram-Sin. In the Amorite period notable is the representation of King Gordy of Lagash, with his mantle and a turban on his head and his hands on the chest. During Babylonian rule famous is the stela of Hammurabi. Assyrian sculpture is notable for its anthropomorphism of cattle and the winged genie, which is seen flying in many reliefs depicting war and hunting scenes, as in the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III. With the advent of writing, arose literature as a means of expressing human creativity. The Cimmerian literature is represented by the Epic of Gilgamesh, written in the 17th century BCE. In it were written 30 myths about the most important Sumerian and Akkadian deities, which are Inanna's descent to hell and the cycle of gods Enki and Tammuz. Another example of relevance is the poem Lugal Ud Melambinirful, whose content type is moral and didactic. During Akkadian period notable is Atarusis, which includes the flood myth. In Babylonian literature notable is the poem Enumerellus, which describes the creation of the world. The music was developed in this region between 4th and 3rd millennium BCE, used in Sumerian temples, where priests sang hymns and psalms to the gods. The liturgic chant was composed of responsories, song alternated between the priests and choir, and antiphons, song alternated between two choirs. They had several instruments like tigi, balug, lilis, alga, zagzal and adapa. In Egypt arose one of the first great civilizations, with elaborate and complex works of art, which assume the professional specialization of the artist, craftsman. Its art was intensely religious and symbolic, with a highly centralized power structure and hierarchy, giving great importance to the religious concept of immortality, especially of the pharaoh, for whom were built great monuments. The Egyptian art spans from 3000 BCE until the conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great. However, its influence persisted in the Coptic art and Byzantine art. The architecture is characterized by its monumentality, achieved by the use of stones in large blocks, lintel and solid columns. Notable are the funerary monuments, with three main types: mastaba, tomb of rectangular form; pyramid, which can be a step pyramid or smooth-sided; and the hypogeum, underground tomb. The other great building is the temple, a monumental complex preceded by an avenue of sphinxes and obelisks, which give way to two pylons and trapezoid walls, a hypaethros, a hypostyle hall and a shrine. Notable are the temples of Karnak, Luxor, Philly and Edfu. Another type of temple is the rock temple, which has the form of a hypogeum, like in Abu Simbel and Deir el-Bahari. Painting was characterized by the juxtaposition of overlapping planes. The images were represented hierarchically, i.e., the pharaoh is larger than the subjects or enemies at his side. Egyptians painted the head and limbs in profile, while the shoulders and eyes in front. Applied arts were developed significantly in Egypt, in particular woodwork and metalwork, with superb examples like cedar furniture inlaid with ebony and ivory of the tombs at the Egyptian Museum, or the pieces found in Tutankhamun's tomb, which are of great artistic quality. Greece and Etruria. Greek and Etruscan artists built on the artistic foundations of Egypt, further developing the arts of sculpture, painting, architecture, and ceramics. The body became represented in a more representational manner, and patronage of art thrived at this time. Roman art is sometimes viewed as derived from Greek precedents, but also has its own distinguishing features. Roman sculpture is often less idealized than the Greek precedents. Roman architecture often used concrete, and the round arch and dome was invented at this time.